I think we are on time, so we can kick off the meeting today. So thank you so much for everyone to join on time, and we are getting more and more people getting in. So we are very much excited to invite you all for our first ever AI for Good webinar series. With the success of our MedTech webinar series for the past 12 months, and we are reaching over 1,500 registration every time we launch. So we thought about there are many things we can use, many things we can utilize this platform what we have achieved. So AI for Good is something we thought it would be very much suitable, and we have an amazing presence from our first launch itself. Today we have some esteemed speaker talking about the Biodiversity 2.0, because usually tech and biodiversity, they see as challenges, they see as a war between two sectors, but we are tech enthusiasts and talking about biotech because we were pretty much into it, and we hands-on on those ecosystem. We talk about land, we talk about water, we talk about life, we talk about pollution, air, even space. So this webinar series, it will stop with this particular one series. It's going to be a continuation, and every month we will talk about technologies which do good in this environment and the society. So today we have some esteemed speaker lined up. So before everything, I want to remind you a small housekeeping about the session. Today's session will be completely recorded, a video and audio, and it will be shared with all the participants and the invitees for this program, roughly around thousands of people. And we love to make sure that you are aware of this. And the chat box is open. So all your questions, meanwhile our speakers are presenting, you can shoot to me. I can represent you on behalf. And finally, if the time allows, we can open for one or two people to talk directly to our resource people. So today we have some interesting people from different verticals. We have Dennis Cornell, a technology and business development executive at RackLife, data center infrastructure innovator. His change of exploring and onboarding new technologies and is a proof of concept to find new areas and collaboration with technology partnerships. That's what his domain is all about. So basically, Dennis previously worked at Yahoo and Verizon Media, leading their vendor partnership relationship and data center technologies. He's a pure tech guy, as for this understanding. Is a board member of Enterprise Neurosystem Group, which we also, SenzAgro, also part of it. So it's a team organization focusing on environment and focusing on biodiversity and technology involvement into it. So he will be talking more about that. And he is part of Urban Bee Lab as a board member as well. So Dennis grew up in Massachusetts and graduated from Northeastern University. So it's my pleasure to have Dennis Cornell. Thank you so much for joining our session today. And the next speaker, we have an interesting environment he's coming from. He's a business guy. So we have Dr. Noah Wilson-Rich, a founder and chief scientific officer of Best Bee Company. So Noah brings a unique blend of scientific expertise and business acumen to the sustainability space. With background in environmental science and biology, he's dedicated his career to developing innovative ecological solutions for the urban environments. His work bridges the gap between cutting-edge researchers, practical applications, and helping organizations to implement nature-based strategies that benefit both businesses and ecosystems. And finally, we are not left the startup ecosystem. We have an inventor in our team. So we have Luke. So Luke Emblem, product designer, lead, and UX specialist. So Luke spent his entire career with intersection of sustainability in the real estate industry. So in college, he sold solar panels and for homeowners, and graduating to Bee Farm, to some of the biggest companies in the world. Today, he runs Verdan Metrics, a venture-backed company focusing on bridging the nature back to the cities. So it's a very interesting panel that we have today. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. So we love to have you all. To kick off this conversation, I just want to give a small background. So where the technology is always, so we talk about carbon credits and technology which is impacting the environment by creating silicons into the market and recycling of equipments. And even in AI is more focusing on business environment. It's not even worrying about energy consumption. There are plenty of black marks in terms of tech and the environment and the biodiversity side of it. So we want to make sure that there are a certain amount of research, implementation, and care the tech industry has, and there is AI for good is a real thing. So to start off the discussion, I'd love to kick off with your perspective on the biodiversity and especially the sectors you guys working on. So let's start with Noah. So to give a corporate perspective of where the sustainability which is involved and what kind of areas you are working on.
Absolutely. Thank you, Miller. And thank you, everybody, for joining. I'm so excited to be here. Biodiversity 2.0, it is such a timely topic, especially with all the changes happening around the world at so many different levels. We need to come together because this is our livelihood. Biodiversity equals risk management. This is a time when my company works with the US federal government and so much disruption is happening. And yet we need to do this imperative work because when we frame biodiversity, not only as a climate or environmental issue, or even for us tech folks as just a great opportunity for this emerging industry of nature tech to grow our businesses, but when we think about the people that we serve and the businesses and clients and enterprises in the business case, we need to reframe biodiversity in a way that everybody can connect with. So when we say risk management, we put it in the business case for clients, for government, and for people to understand that when the world has a biodiversity crisis, meaning when there is the insect apocalypse, as some people have used, when so many species are dying, it's important to understand that every living creature, plant, animal, bacteria, fungus, they play an ecological role. And when a species is lost or when a species is threatened, that role, that job in the society, if we think about Earth as a planet or as a business, we're losing a function. And even if we don't understand that function, even if we don't think that this endangered species of bee that was on a property where Meta, it's the company that owns Facebook and Instagram, where they wanted to build new real estate, if we think, oh, this species of bee, well, it doesn't really matter. That stopped their billion-dollar project because that bee was there. And we can understand how this has a huge business case for monitoring in low-cost ways in advance of a business investing so much money into a project that could then be derailed later on because the risk was too great to an environment. We now have technology through AI that allows us to lower the costs for monitoring to then help speed up our understanding of what is the role, what is out there. So some of the things we'll talk about today involve acoustic sensors. How do we just put a sensor in the garden and landscape so that companies can start to monitor in advance of projects so that we don't have a climate disaster that is putting the company's operations at risk? When a company cannot transport goods because there's an environmental crisis, when a company cannot have employees come to work because there's a flood that washed out bridges, there's wildfires. I'm here in California where everybody had to evacuate. There's still major highways and roads and communities that are not operational. The business case here, therefore, because the biodiversity is disrupted in an area, increased the risk so much that businesses had to shut down, that workers could not function, that even months after these climate crisis has happened, that impacted the biodiversity by dropping it so low that the air quality is too terrible for people to live in some areas in Southern California still, because we don't have the plants there to take in the polluted air and to create oxygen for us to breathe. There's a business case. In summary, we need to think about biodiversity as risk management. It's a totally new perspective, and that's where technologies like what we'll discuss today can help with solutions that everybody can be a part of in a low-cost way.
Thank you so much, Noah. You brought in a perfect area. So even we have collaborated on that segment through SenzAgro. So the smallest thing in the biodiversity that make the biggest changes, especially like bees and photosynthesis producing algae. So that's where the disaster of the world going to be started. And you talk about one of the interesting point, the water. Especially water will be the next energy, next fuel of this entire world. Where most of the fights, and we can see that in our part of the world, one river being stopped by one country and the other country got into a war. They declared the war, and it's happening already. So
Absolutely, Miller. And to add too, when we say a bee, for example, the Meta Bee Project, or at my company was the Best Bees Company, a little bee might not seem very important, but when we remember the role of biodiversity, bees give us food and bees give us air to breathe through plants. So if you eat food or breathe air, then you absolutely need to care about biodiversity and the ways that technology can support it.
Thank you so much, Noah, for this amazing intro. And next, I want to tap into Luke. So, Luke, so you working on a very interesting area, as Noah mentioned, in the environment of Meta, like real estate. So, where majority of the people worry about environment factors. So, you working on biodiversity conservation and monitoring, evaluation, and bringing the biodiversity aspect to the urban. It's a very visionary thought process in your young age you're starting with. Love to hear from you, Luke, where you see the value, what you do, and give a small intro about the importance of the biodiversity in the urban areas.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks, Noah, for kicking us off. So I worked in kind of urban biodiversity over the last couple of years, and kind of the common thing that I heard coming up over and over again from real estate executives is that they wanted to do this, like they wanted a little bit more nature on their building. The issue is it's kind of really hard to do. So when you look out there, you have some decisions like, hey, I could plant a forest outside if I want to do that on my lawn, or I could plant these massive wildflower gardens. As they look into that, not the easiest thing to kind of pull off, not easy to put in off the shelf. So how do we kind of make that easier for them? And what we kind of landed on is, well, you could use IoT sensors and you could use AI. And you can kind of grab all this information, and then you could turn those into actionable insights for them. So instead of, hey, just plant a wildflower garden, maybe it's plant a garden right here, and you're going to be able to increase the amount of bugs by X%. And as we started doing this research and we started combining a lot of different variables into kind of one insights, we started to see some interesting things. So for example, when you see pesticides spike up, obviously we know that's bad for bugs, but we could actually tell you how bad it is for bugs, how long that effect actually lasts. And you could do the same thing down to air quality. For example, so as Noah said, if the bees come out and they help us with air quality, that's great. But how do you actually kind of manage that? So if there's less bees in one site, is air quality going to be worse there? Once you have that information, and once the real estate executive's looking at that, now it's a business case. It's not about saving the bees. It's about making sure that your tenants are safe every time that they go into the building. It's about making sure that you're serving your community. And when you're talking about these guys, when they actually have to zone these projects, get approvals from the city when they're building a new building, proving that you're actually making that positive environmental impact, that can mean the difference in millions and millions of dollars, or maybe there's just a rare bee there, for example. So all in all, it's about risk, but it's about giving them the information that they need. Biodiversity is a lot harder than carbon. You don't just get to track one metric and kind of call it a day, and we're just kind of putting that all together, making it easy for them.
Definitely. Since we know about what you do, and it's an amazing thing that it's not only it to an impact in the environment and biodiversity. At the same time, it gives so much valuable insight in the commercial aspect as well for an industry which is like building in constructions to the real estate industry, to understand how much the water porosity of the soil and understanding how much it's safe to live in terms of understanding the pollution rate of there, and it's real time. It gives ideology to the people who are going to choose an environment for their retirement life. They want a peaceful environment, not only in terms of sound and quiet environment. It's supposed to be pollution free. It's supposed to have a good biodiversity, and it's supposed to be long term. So your technology will be and fill all those gaps and gives a better understanding for real estate agent, which is they never thought before doing some construction work. Biodiversity is only for the certification purpose only it was considered. Now it's more for a lifestyle change based on your organization and your work. Thank you so much, Luke, for that.
Yeah. So just as an addendum, just something that's coming up a lot now, and you could read it when we're just jumping back on kind of risk, is something they're talking about in real estate now is this concept of stranded assets. So stranded asset is basically, maybe it's like an old office building. It's an industrial site where the ceilings are too low, so you can't fit any modern machinery in it. If you have a stranded asset, that's worth zero, right? And that's kind of the worst thing that you want to avoid. We see a future where maybe if there's a flood risk that's too high on an asset, that's a stranded asset. If the air quality is not good enough, then that's a stranded asset. Maybe we're reaching on the bees, but maybe one day if you don't support pollinators enough, that'll be a stranded asset as well. So ultimately, it's about future-proofing your portfolio. How do you kind of put nature on it? How do you make it worth keeping for the long term? These are long-term investments at the end of the day.
Perfect. Definitely, that is something we really want to work on. And nowadays, every construction company talk about living forest in a building and so on, bringing vertical farming in-house in a building. So we try to put more and more complicated, more and more expensive stuff, rather considering what's available around and understanding the ecosystem which is already available. So that's something you can definitely contribute to, and it's amazing that you all start working on that. And finally, Dan, so I love to hear, so to introduce about the Enterprise Neurosystem Group, specifically from you, because of the work that group community do. It's amazing, and people are contributing to it willingly. That's amazing. So we love to hear about that. What kind of ecosystem which is talking about the enterprise, working in the Enterprise Neurosystem Group, and your perspective in terms of technology involvement and what kind of area and business opportunities, since you're already part of Urban Bee Lab, so you are very serious about the environment and the business aspect of it. So over to you, Dan.
Yeah, thanks, Miller. So Enterprise Neurosystem tries to tap into the world's network, right, with bees and flowers and insects and water, and looking into that network to map it, to look for deeper causes and conditions and find solutions to restore balance to our environment. A lot of these systems developed over hundreds of millions of years, and they can be lost in a year, right? We've lost so much, and there are epochs when life gets destroyed by volcanoes and craters, but we don't want to lose humanity, and we want to do what we can to preserve this environment and learn from it. People have gut biomes that control their health and even their mental state, and we're only beginning to scratch the surface of that. And bees are connected to flowers, and they see the electrical charge of the flower, like fascinating things that we're not going to be able to see unless we do deep investigation and exploration. And big animals like wolves and big predators keep down the herbivores and help with big growth of trees. Like the interconnectivity of everything is fascinating, and I think we need a big group of various backgrounds, geopolitical affiliations to help with this, because we're all in this together. Everybody wants clean air, clean water, and it's hard to think of like decades, centuries, millennia. But I think sometimes we do for the future generations, to see what can we do now to preserve what we have and keep it safe. I've always kind of been into comic books and science fiction, and I think whatever we can kind of imagine, we can help create. Like the seed bank's already been used in some countries, like in Syria, where they lost certain flowers. So I just feel it's our responsibility to care about that world for both ourselves and future generations, because we have a world that's full of abundance. Like the ocean alone could support us all, but we have to be careful of how much we pollute it, right? We're dumping tons of fertilizer into the ocean, and it kills off fish and makes us all more polluted. But it's hard to imagine it, right? You think the world can take it, we can pollute where we want. So we need amazing folks like Luke and Noah to help us understand what we're doing to our environment and how to best support it for the health of everyone, for kind of a greater future for everybody. I think it's imperative to support the scientists. I more come from a business background, but I'm in this with them. So if I can help them with funding, access to customers, access to amazing folks in technology, that's what I try to bring to the table. And like with SenzAgro, we come to you with an idea of, hey, can you build an acoustic sensor for beekeepers that's low cost and can tell them if their queen bee is live? You guys are able to develop something in months. So just this creating a team or a network that is in this to help is imperative. Enterprise Neurosystem works with the United Nations, developing nations, to help support bringing climate change solutions to those areas, as well as look for ideas from those people of different background, people of different means and ideas, and solving things that are even in space. Like there's some Native Americans involved with NASA right now to see how they could use ancient adobe methods to build housing on Mars with like very small particles of silt. So I'm just always fascinated with combining science and business and tackling issues of poverty and preservation. So that's what I'm passionate about, and we've seen Enterprise Neurosystem is open to anybody. So anybody on the call that wants to learn more, please reach out. But it's like, hey, I have an idea of how we can clean the water in this part of the world, or I have all this data of smog pollution, and we want to triangulate sources and find ways of doing carbon capture. Like, there's so many amazing solutions out there, but it's connecting it with businesses, connecting it with the population. I think the making science more accessible to everyone is really essential. And I've always found like Agrospace and Luke and Noah are just amazing at that. So that's why I'm here, to do what I can to get people to support this and understand how it impacts their lives.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Dan. You touched upon amazing things. Since people closely working with Enterprise Neurosystem for a while right now, so the community, that has professors, it has technologies, entrepreneurs like us, and enthusiasts, and people working on open source project to contribute to the world. Anyone can take this and take it to the world. So that thought process is very attractive, and that's one of the main reasons we joined the team as well. And end of the call also, we'll be open up for any contributors can join the team, and we'll be sharing those details via email as well. And especially Dan, you talk about one interesting point, the seed bank concept. Yes, it was some sort of a missing piece in the timeline, I would say, because the seed bank concept was there for thousands of years. So there are records in the Egyptian period, and in South Asian period context, we call it, the temples are the tallest buildings in the past. So that's mount for like 300, 400 feet tall. And we have a context called a copper-based container called kalasam, which is on the top of the temple. Even you have a flood which comes up to 400 feet height, your native seeds will be protected within that. So it's basically fed with the seed. So people know about this for thousands of years, and somewhere in the middle, we lost the important things, and we focus on more things which is not even making sense, purely based on money and purely based on wealth gathering and so on. So, but it's great that technology, understanding everything, and we as a community, we contributing. So it comes to a next point. So sustainability always has been kind of a volunteer driven. That's one of the main thought process. It's kind of volunteer driven. It's supposed to be passion driven. But how long you can do this as a volunteer, how long you can contribute to the environment if it's not feed you, if it's not take care of your family. So the next component of our conversation is supposed to be focused on that, I believe, the business end of sustainability and biodiversity and the impact side of it. Especially if you make a business that creating good for the environment and it's making money for you and your team and your entrepreneurial journey to succeed. And that's what the sustainable impact is all about. It cannot be sustainable if it's not making sustainable by itself. So it's supposed to generate revenue. So I want to take this conversation to the next stage to talk about more in towards technology and what kind of areas technology is contributing in the biodiversity side of it and the impact creation side of it. Second, the financial aspect of biodiversity innovations. So allowed to open up the conversation from everyone. So we can start with Noah. So allowed to get your thought process, because I know you working with large brands, the top Fortune 500 brands, to focus on the impact. So you made that possible. So allow to get this thought process from you first.
Yes, of course. Well, thank you, Miller. And this is so exciting because in this modern world where we have more technological tools available to us than ever, it's really up to us to overcome this hurdle of thinking, okay, this is too complicated, I don't understand it. Or even, as I've encountered with my own team, this technology is too complicated, I'm afraid of it. So many people are afraid of AI, whereas I see AI as a tool to help enhance our capacity for impacting the world in a positive way. So other tools, including social media, I started the Best Bees company with a Facebook page and no money while I was a student. And so when I go around the world and giving keynote talks, I love to talk to young people about entrepreneurship, because when we're thinking about the technology that young people have access to, where they've always had email, they've always had internet, maybe they've always had AI at this point if you're very young, It's an exciting time where for me, I was able to start my company with no money. 15 years into it now, we're a national multi-million-dollar company that focuses on biodiversity services, where we employ everyday people and beekeepers to install and manage pollinator habitats for companies, like you said, large Fortune 500 companies, the federal government. We've worked with NASA. And so what we do is we install gardens, we install beehives, and we'll manage them for people. If it's an empty rooftop, like we've discussed here, it's an asset that everybody has around the world, an empty roof. You can think about it differently and install a garden there where you can have, if it's an apartment building, an added amenity that adds value to that real estate because now it's a hot property. It increases the sales and the marketing potential for that asset because families can grow carrots and grow food for their children from an otherwise empty rooftop. It doesn't cost much money. You can have the honey that's custom labeled to say, hey, this honey that we're sharing with the community has 120 different species of plants in it because we looked at the environmental DNA, the plant DNA, we call it honey DNA, and we use an AI tool to match up what species it's with. Now that honey that goes to the community that's custom branded with a large corporation and saying, hey, we're doing our part to enhance the biodiversity. We're monitoring this in our environments in a way that builds community, that drives our corporate reporting. A lot of reporting is required for nature, biodiversity, for sustainability. What's next? Now that everybody's doing net carbon zero goals and energy, next up is nature metrics and biodiversity, and that's what the companies are now doing as a competitive advantage. So we've just covered here how biodiversity enhances sales for companies in real estate by giving more of a competitive edge to those hot properties to live and work. We're seeing spending data showing that ecological sustainability is so tied with economic sustainability because of the sales and marketing benefits. And so this is really driving business in incredible ways. We've seen an industry start worldwide after I started the Best Bees company 15 years ago. What this is all around the world. So any country can do this. And when I consult with the World Bank, thinking about ecological sustainability, and we look at honey, we see models like New Zealand, where everybody knows that Manuka honey is so expensive and brings a lot of money to that environment in that country, just like we're doing with other countries around the world. And just like with SenzAgro and your whole team, Miller, doing for Sri Lanka with amazing sensors, there's an ecological benefit as well as an economic benefit to biodiversity services. And we're seeing this worldwide. It's a very exciting time.
Exactly, Noah. So as you said, like before certain time, it was impact, the CSR program, the environment biodiversity, it's always like certifications and qualified data. It's pretty much qualified information and more structured text-based, questionnaire-based information you're collecting. People trust based on some words, and words can be more articulated and more poetic in terms. But quantifying the data, technology plays a major role. And in the past 1-2 decades, with the enhancement of technology, so the data capturing and quantifying the impact, which been enhanced a lot. So then we make more decision making based on data-driven evidence. So that's something achieved so far, and there's a lot of opportunities because biodiversity environment been spoken for very long time, but it's never been addressed in a perspective that last 2 decades was addressing with data. So the opportunities are so huge where the entrepreneurs can play a major role. That's where the impact in investments and impact family offices picking up their investment towards these areas. So you brought in a fantastic topic to discuss about it. Thank you so much for that. So Luke, you getting into this industry as a young entrepreneur or getting into this impact-driven ecosystem, how do you see the financial opportunity, how much you see the technology going to be contribute, and where you see the technology and the AI enhancement, especially for the first time in the world, the very hardcore hardware, very efficient, expensive hardware being interfaced by simple interfaces like ChatGPT and OpenAI interfaces or Gemini to a common man. So this interaction allows a tremendous opening where advanced processing and AI can be reached to a common man, and where you see this opportunity can be taken to, and how much you believe on this to start a company on this biodiversity aspect of it.
Yeah, there's a lot there, but I guess I'll take a step back. So when we talk about kind of sustainability and like why do companies care about this, and this kind of ranges from everyone from oil companies that maybe just want to look a little better, companies like Coca-Cola, for example, where they're trying to come up with different ways that they're able to reach out. But if you take a step back, like why do companies do sustainability in the first place? From my research and from conversations with people I've had over years, that kind of falls into three main buckets. So the first one is to save money. So sustainability can be a great way to save money. Examples of that are if you plant a meadow, you get rid of your lawn expenses are going to go down by 80%. You're not maintaining it anymore. Now you can talk a little bit more about that. You see a lot of sustainable packaging companies that will do the same thing. If you use like microbial grows or if you use fungal alternative packaging, you could save a lot of money. So that's kind of the big overarching example, and that's probably the most powerful one when we're talking about these big companies. Second reason is reduce risk. So we've already spoken a little bit more about that. The big one in my neck of the woods, I guess, that we see is a lot of corporate issuers. So a corporate issuer is just anybody that goes out, they raise money, and then they use that money to make more. So commercial real estate's a great example. You go out, you collect billions of dollars for a fund, you buy a bunch of buildings, you operate them, you make more money. Right now, those corporate issuers are spending $500,000 a year on average on carbon disclosures. So we just assume that they're going to have to do the same thing for biodiversity 5-10 years down the line. Up in Canada, our Prime Minister is actually one of the writers of the new TNFD, which is kind of the big overarching regulations that's starting to hit a lot of commercial real estate. But we think that 500,000 number is going to be touching the biodiversity side as well. And when you're reducing risk there, what that just means is they don't want to be caught, I guess, with their pants down when they have to do this stuff and they don't have any of the technologies or any of the ways that they're able to collect all of that. So reducing risk is the second big part. And that's where those metrics come in. I mean, having those metrics ready to go, ready to throw in a report, because we don't really know when this is going to move or how it's going to move. Just an easy way to be able to kind of throw that on a report, say you're doing something. And the final one Noah kind of touched on is brand differentiation. So how do you market yourself as a sustainable brand? There's a lot of cool ways to do that. I think honeybees are a fantastic mascot when you're talking about kind of sustainability. One of the stories from my days is one of a big MD that I used to work with who would go out and raise money. He had branded all of his honey jars with his name, and he would hand it out to family offices. And he said, hey, look, this is the honey that we collected on our property. You could come, you could lend us money, you could be a part of this. Just doing things like that is an easy way to kind of set yourselves apart. It's a mascot for all of your sustainability efforts. And to our end, what we've started doing is we've started taking spectrograms, so little 5-second chunks of bioacoustics, and you could basically listen to it. You could hear the animal call at your property. We think that's a really cool way to differentiate yourself on like an investor perspective, for example. Not a lot of people are showing the sounds of nature at their property. But if you're asking about sustainability, those are kind of the three main buckets: save money, reduce risk, and differentiate your brand.
Yeah, definitely. And I remember the first conversation we've made in a call, that you talk about people evaluate the real estate based on the biodiversity sound and the birds singing and how much flowers and bees available. So this is pretty much alien for my part of the world. So this is amazing that we're moving towards that, and that's the exact better way also. Then only for the purpose of marketing aspect, people talk about eco-powered building, ecotourism, and all the perspective. It's not being tapped, not being evaluated, not being tracked or monitored to give a perspective that this is why we are eco-friendly, this is why which is sustainable. That awareness never been given. It's just given as a lifestyle, as a package to sell. It's an attractive feature. That's how it was sold so far. But the impact need to be conveyed by taking eco-friendly flight with less weight. You make this much of contribution to the environment and the society, and that can turn into something. So that perspective was never been tapped unless it was tracked properly and monitored properly and quantified properly. So you guys working on a perfect environment, and we see a fantastic opportunity to going forward. And which brings me to a point to talk to Dan. Especially, we also, as a impact social-driven company, SenzAgro also access plenty of climate adaptation fundings and impact-driven investments to do certain things on the regenerative agriculture and implementing technologies on the ground. So we know certain amount of understanding on the funding models and the conservation technology available in the market from people who could worry about, people who care about, from COP28, Afro 100, and thousands of companies, family offices, they're focusing on this. So I would love to get your perspective, since you work with UN and multiple organizations on this aspect. So then it's like where you see the funding models and the conservation technology and the economic viability of the biodiversity data is lies on.
Yeah, I mean, there's some great funds provided by the World Bank, the United Nations. I'm also seeing a big trend right now where almost every country wants to have its own AI strategy, and they're trying to develop the resources within the country to help support business, to help support academic research. So it's this great nexus right now of opportunities to combine business, government, and research together. And yes, if you're increasing crop yields, or if you're making your food more resilient, there's investment within the country, but you can't just kind of go at it alone. You do have to get together with those different groups, and even artists, and get people excited, make it accessible. Be like, hey, we're doing research on pistachio growth, and we're trying to find the most resilient crop, because if temperatures rise, we need it, or our crop will be gone and we'll lose all this business. I think like with coffee and chocolate, those things are sensitive, and the climate's changing pretty dramatically. So investing in preparing for those changes, there's a lot of support there. I think there's an adaptation fund that's really interesting to say, okay, we can't just go back easily, but what happens if we adapt? How do we make our current environment more healthy and adapt to some of these changes, like ocean levels rising? But I found a really inspiring kind of process where all these countries will have kind of incubator days where they'll get together, and people with amazing ideas will come pitch, and the government and businesses will listen and help promote that and support it. That's what we at the Enterprise Neurosystem do. It's called the Grand Challenge. We do it with the UN, but anybody can do it. You could do it within your own country, and you get these groups together and you say, oh, this idea is amazing, but it's just science. Let's bring in the business aspect to it. Let's bring in the government arm into it to support it, to nurture it, to grow it, and use AI, right? Like I see a lot of contributing factors where combining these groups will support in-country growth of amazing ideas, or across borders too. That's what I'm seeing, right? Like good ideas are floating to the top. We see that with search engines in general. You could connect to teams that are passionate about bees or acoustic sensors, and like you were saying, yeah, do-gooders always want to help, but you do need to combine it with business and regulation. And we have pretty much solved the issue of like the ozone hole in the sky with chlorofluorocarbons. We have been able to preserve endangered animals, but we need to get people on board. We need to we can't just hope people will always do the right thing. We need to combine it with government regulation, business, academics, and it's easier than you think. Like China had this amazing program where they brought these top scientists to live with poor rural farmers for 10 years, and they just gave them new ideas on crop resilience, how to grow things, how to do smart irrigation, and they increased crop yield by 30%. I think we just need more kind of like this ecosystem. We need to interact more with different areas of society and see what that brings.
Definitely, Dan. So you brought into a perfect point where my next question is. But before that, so we have a participant waiting for a long time on a question. So Mr. Cameron Prince, so I can open up your mic so where you can contribute. You had a question in the past. So Mr. Cameron, you can talk right now, I believe. Yes. You can open up your mic and you can speak.
Thank you very much. My question is, what opportunities are there to standardize and monetize biodiversity data so that it can drive investment flow into biodiversity conservation and ecological restoration?
Thank you, Cameron. Noah or Dan, anyone can answer the question?
I think if you look at, hey Cameron, thanks for the question. Green Wave is a really interesting approach where fisherman that was doing the big trawling of fish back in the 80s. He's from Canada. He was in an industry. He just saw like, we're just grabbing everything and we're leaving nothing. And you read back like hundreds of years ago, there was just fish everywhere along the eastern coast of the United States. So he's like, all right, we're losing all the fish. I love fishing. I want to sustain this environment. So he started a company that just grows kelp, and the kelp is a habitat for fish, and he grows oysters and mussels there. So he created a sustainable approach to creating biodiversity that had so many great side effects from it, with return of fish, cleaner water, more recreational areas. So that was someone that just was part of that world, saw it kind of being decimated, and came up with a novel approach of how to bring it back in a way that has a bit of economic return for those that are invested into it. That's a great example of just someone seeing a need and creating a company around it. Back to like the incubator ideas, if you have an idea or if you just have a challenge, those are the perfect places to say like, hey, the fungal network of the forest is so healthy, and the old growth forest, like how do we tap into that? How do we quantify it a bit so people either protect it or help monetize it, or find ways to tap into those natural ecosystems, preserve it, but also find ways like to have some sort of like healthy logging, right? Like wait till a tree is at a certain age or maybe diseased and take it out there. I think finding that intersection of all those different groups in a sustainable but economic way is possible, and there are some good examples of it.
Thank you, Dan. I hope, Cameron, you got your answer, and have Mr. Nimal Palipuram lined up for the next question. Nimal, over to you.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Miller. I have a question for any one of the panelists. When we started this long time ago, thousands of years ago, everything was biodiverse. And we started domesticating the food we need to eat and everything. Now we are in a situation where in the last 50 years, no one wanted to be biodiverse. They just wanted to focus on one cultivar of rice, wheat, everything. They absolutely kill biodiversity. And the reason we gave was that it makes the food cheaper. The food accessible for 9 billion people. Now we are talking about biodiversity for the right reason, but can we do it commercially so that this would be available? I mean, like Miller, I come from Sri Lanka. We don't have a luxury to be biodiverse. Our concern is food security. 3 meals a day. I mean, people don't want to hear that kind of stuff in New York, London, Milan, and Tokyo. But this is the case for Global South. If I go to those countries and say, oh, you know something, the food is going to be biodiverse, it's going to cost more money, excuse my language, they're going to shoot you in the head. So my issue is that the so-called biodiversity, and it's AI and everything, is it really going to make a difference where we can actually increase the biodiversity of these plants? We can eat different kinds of rice, different kinds of wheat, different kinds of things, and also not having to pay an enormous amount of money for those things, basically. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Nimal. Noah, I think you wanted to answer.
Yeah, great question. I'm like, put me in. That's great. So let's break down biodiversity, going just to diversity part, because as I mentioned, I do work with the federal government in the United States. We've had to change our language a little bit. When we talk about biodiversity, as I mentioned earlier, we talk about risk management. When we're thinking about crops, like in Sri Lanka, I totally understand this. When there's diversity at the crop level, even if it's one crop, if there's no diversity, then the performance goes down. The new word for diversity is performance. Really, we talk about DEI, we talk about diversity in groups, because they can have more opportunities, you can spot new markets, you can hire new talent. When we look at the crop level, if there's very low diversity at the gene level, that increases the risk of disease, that decreases the adaptability of that crop in the face of climate change, in the face of floods. If everything is the same, then if there's one threat to that gene, the whole crop is lost. That increases the cost of food. So food availability is at risk. Nutrition, then famine, the risk of those is extremely high because the diversity of that crop is low. If we go back, at least in the United States, to before World War II, when we had more diverse farms and agriculture versus after World War II, when new technologies created monoculture crops, where everything was ripped up and only one thing was planted there, that changed the entire agricultural system. It caused a need for many pesticides because you had one crop instead of the diversity at the crop level. So again, thinking about risk.
No, just a minute. I understand all of this, but my point is that which country is going to be the experimental lab for this transition? I mean, yes, I mean, what happened in the US, but look at the upside. We became a huge exporter of food. And no one complains. We are right now, we export so much food because of that monoculture. Yes, monoculture comes with a massive price over the longer term. But my problem is that which country is going to be the experimental lab where you, as you correctly said, you increase the genetic diversity of this crop, and that would over time help us deal with these climate change related issues. So if I am interested in the transition, that's what kind of bothers me when I look at it, is happening energy transition. It's like, who is going to pay the price, and who is going to say, put a hand up and say, we are willing to take the risk, so we know the long-term benefit of it.
Absolutely. Well, I agree with you here. And, as an example, in Sri Lanka with the coconut rhinoceros beetle, I mean, this is something that SenzAgro has been working on to detect this in advance. So Sri Lanka is taking the lead here really because of our hosts today, where it doesn't cost too much money, but that famine, that risk is driving innovation. It's driving individual people and tech startups in this nature tech space to collaborate like with us in the United States. We have to do it ourselves. And that's why we're all here in this webinar, in this panel today, to discuss solutions, to look at technologies that don't cost a lot of money, but give us business opportunities now as the leaders, from Sri Lanka to Silicon Valley with Enterprise Neurosystem with Dan to Montreal with Luke. It's an exciting time, even though governments are not going to come and save us. We're just not seeing that happen. It's going to be in the startup community, and it's all of us here seeing the economic opportunity to really reinforce our crops now before all of those terrible things happen.
Okay, from your experience, there are 6 companies in the world outside China which owns the food chain. I don't want to name the names, about 6 or 7 companies. Are any one of them willing to accept this transition and willing to say, something, what we are doing is might make us money today, but it comes with a huge cost for everyone involved? And are any one of them willing to say, like, something, we are going to go from monoculture to multiculture, like it used to be thousands of years ago? Have you seen that at all? I mean, I understand private company startup. I know Miller. I know that's the whole idea of a startup. But are the larger behemoths willing to say, something, we'll put the money? And someone talked about a fund. The large guys and say, we put $500 million in startup a fund, and we are going to put funds all around the world for these people trying to increase the food security over a longer term in terms of diversifying the genetics of food sources.
I would say, and then I'll pass on the mic too, that keep your eye on the United Kingdom. In England, and there's a group called AgriSound that's doing some work in this space with food producers as their main clients. So that's really exciting to see that the producers are putting their money towards a lot of this AI-driven sensor technology. And I really think that with SenzAgro and Miller's team, that's how we're going to drive scale and try to work with those models in more places in the world. It's a really great question that is going to be asked much more often, and I'm glad that you brought it up here. Anybody else, please feel welcome to contribute.
Yeah, so I'd like to add a little bit, and there are 2 more questions we need to address within time. So basically, Nimal, you were perfectly right on the 6 companies, which from the seed to fertilizer, they become, they basically produce a weapon in the Second World War, and now working on the food industry, putting those chemicals into the farming. It's all happening. But so the changes being experimented in different countries. For an example, in the previous government, Sri Lanka went 100% organic overnight. So it's not only decision making of a government, but also it's something, an infrastructure and the environment, everything need to be in place to make this move. So we lost 30% of our staple food, and we, for the first time from independence 75 years, we have import rice from multiple countries. So to give a very recent incident, because the infrastructure never been prepared, people were never been trained, they were trained for this chemical-based farming. Overnight, a decision, it cannot be made. There's a success story. Netherlands, they had a success plan to become organic and natural multicultural-based production, and they had a 2020 plan, and they have succeeded by 2% more than what they estimated. So it's possible if we have policies and the people working hand in hand, and it can be possible. Or just policies and infrastructure, and farmers and people are not accepting, not willing to work accordingly with a particular discipline, that it's very, very hard to get on board. So it's not only something which pushed to the developing nation. The experiment was done by G20 and big players as well. Yeah, Dan and Luke, one by one you can take on, and we have 2 more questions within time.
Yeah, I'll try to go quick. I mean, Nimal, I think what you said is very true. If people have food insecurity, we can't ask them anything. But I guess I would just mention, people can also change trends. I think a lot of people go after that Western diet of a lot of meat, very hard to sustain. But yeah, people want that, or they're used to it, or they're conditioned to be used to it. But a plant-based diet is very healthy, far more sustainable. People have experimented with insects. There's also like native foods that can be brought back to areas. Totally agree. Like, yeah, we can't say, hey, everybody adopt to this new way of things. But like Noah said, Europe has a way where different countries have different strengths. Like one has sheep, one has cheese, one has wine. You could also do that in poorer nations if people come together. Very hard to answer, but I think there are solutions, and it's not all like, yeah, we're at the whim of these 6 companies.
Yeah, just a simple comment is that I somehow suspect that if you go back in the history, we can learn a lot from our ancestors who have done fantastic stuff for the last 10, 15,000 years, and we don't seem to listen to them, and we tend to think we know everything today, and we are totally messing it up, and that's a real pity. Almost every society has a great stories like this, where they have done things. Even the smallest countries have done things, and that's the reason we are alive today. If they haven't done it, we would have died out a long time ago. But we don't seem to take them seriously, but we tend to think everything comes from a lab with the chemicals and everything, and that's just a pity. But Miller, as always, thank you so much for this thing. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Luke, you have anything to say quickly? We have
I actually like the train of thought, and I get where you're going for. So there's a lot of cool research going on in Canada. We had 10,000 years of agricultural history to borrow from the Indigenous people that were here before us. And 3 sister cropping is basically an intercropping method where you combine squash, you combine corn, you combine beans. And when that grows together, it fixes nitrogen into the soil, and you're able to grow much more efficiently than wheat. So the problem with agriculture today is you're optimizing for harvesting, and you're optimizing for shipment. So like when you get a tomato, well, I guess this is different depending on where you're sitting on the call, but when I eat a tomato in Montreal, it comes from California. When they picked it 6 weeks ago. They pick it green, so not grown yet, and then they spray it with chlorine and other stuff so that it actually kind of harvests in the truck, so that when it gets to you, you're able to have it, and it looks like this nice red tomato, but there's no taste to it, of course. So the point I'm making is when you're doing factory farming, what you're actually doing is how do we most efficiently turn a seed into kind of the bread that you're eating at the store. And that means that it has to be very neat fields that the tractor is able to go over. And to bring it back to what we're talking about today, AI and IoT and robotics has a lot to do in terms of fixing that intercropping problem. Because the only way we can't do intercropping now is because you can't neatly kind of run a tractor over it and collect it all. You have to go and you have to collect it one by one. You have to take it apart. It requires a little more finesse. So where I see the future is kind of low-cost robotics, low-cost AI systems. You're going to be able to go back to those traditional methods because labor is not going to be a huge bottleneck. And maybe in developing countries are able to pick that up a little quicker. So I think there's a lot to learn from the past. You just got to kind of marry it with what we're able to do now with technology. And all of this is getting so cheap thanks to organizations like SenzMate.
You're muted, Miller.
Sorry, I need quick answers from the panel. So we have 2 more questions. One from Robert Barry. Thank you for the question. So the question is there any concern about the effects of chemtrails on the soil ecosystem, and the bees. So chemtrail, basically the chemical trials you have based on air from some flights, you have aeroplane which has smoke and which has a trail behind, and even the same thing on heavy metals on the ground and chemical trials on the ground, which has effects on the bees. So it's a technical question maybe for Noah. So do you think the chemical trials in the soil is make any ecosystem changes for the bees, or if there is any effects on the bees due to chemical trials?
Yeah, I will say that I haven't seen data supporting this hypothesis. However, we have a network of data yielding beehives. And so because we have research beehives dispersed over such a large distance, we can collect data from them to understand what chemicals are in them. And we look at the performance of those beehives, how much honey they're making, how long they live, to see what environmental factors might be impacting their health. And this is where AI and sensors really come in handy so that we can collect data and assess this information at scale. I will finally say that bees promote plants, and plants are a wonderful way to remove toxins from the soil. Sunflowers are an example that can take out heavy metals. Because bees promote sunflowers, they're a way to mitigate those potentially negative impacts of chemtrails and other environmental factors there. So we can both monitor as well as remediate the environment and soil because of bees.
Thank you, Noah. And finally, I have a question from Vivian and a follow-up question on that. The fact that it's an era of biodiversity crisis, I'm really eager to know how this can be grabbed through AI. So how AI can play a major role on the biodiversity. To give some examples on the AI, so anyone can take over. Maybe Dennis?
Sure. I mean, like Nimal was saying before, we can learn so much from our ancestors, as well as latest and greatest scientific research. And I mean, you can think of it like a search engine, right? Looking through tons of data, come up with ideas, look at experiments that worked, experiments that failed. I think that's how humanity's progressed, right? They stand on the shoulders of the people before them, and we've never been able to organize data at this level, create simulations of environments, and do testing, learn from it. I think that is a really exciting part of AI that we're tapping into now, and it benefits the medical industry, the agricultural industry, everyone. So that's something I'm pretty excited about, that I think AI can really help us with just new approaches to problems.
Definitely. And Vivian follow-ups with another question that are we considering the traditional biodiversity conservation approaches like habitat and species approach when implementing AI? I can answer that question because definitely that's what the way forward. Also, more than we consider this as approaches. In terms of AI, we call it like it's localization. So we localize the technology where people can adapt. So technology always been a tool. It never been a mainstream. So AI also another tool, just like a hammer, just like a shovel you use in day-to-day operations. So AI also will be a tool that efficiently optimize the way you work on. So it's not, so agriculture is one of the oldest jobs or oldest industries which are available in the world. So definitely without the previous generation of knowledge base that fed into the AI, that cannot be a move forward in the next industry. So whatever the current food ecosystem, we can talk about robotics, we can talk about fruit picking robots, planting, seeding, biodiversity robots, and everything with running autonomous vehicles and everything running on AI. But it's all just basically replicating something which is manually done in our habitat and species-based approach for a long time. We're just making more efficient. So it's just a tool, nothing to more depend on that. But definitely it's supposed to consider the old information. That means the data which is available in the past, that is the basic feed for the next generation of AI development for the future. So definitely that will be considered, and no one is left out because AI cannot fix agriculture or the food, what we produce or what we eat. AI can improve the way we produce, way we store, way we taking from farm to fork. That's all AI can do. We can't eat silicons and chips so far. So until that, we are safe to say that we still in the same inherited way of farming mechanisms. Hope I give a brief understanding on that. So unfortunately, we will have to wind up. We have a very short time lab. This is a topic we can talk for the entire day with this amazing resource people. And thank you so much for everyone participating actively on the conversation. We had a couple of more topics. Unfortunately, we can't cover today, and we'll keep that for another conversation. So so thank you so much everyone for joining today, and this will be the first of the series, and we see a lot of potential on the AI for good in different segments, and we will definitely consider every feedback from yours. So feel free to give us feedbacks, and there's a feedback form shared in the chat. And as I mentioned, as I promised, this recording and all the contacts of the resource people and the way you can communicate with them will be reached you through an email as a follow-up on this workshop. So thank you so much for sticking to us for 1 hour. It's been an amazing time I had. And thank you so much for all our resource people, Dennis, Luke, and Noah. It's a great pleasure to meet you and talk to you all the time. And see you very soon with an amazing topic and another set of resource people. Have a great day. Thank you so much, and good night if you are in the Eastern world. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Good to see you all. Bye-bye.